Trade talks continue to escalate surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks, and this one is very interesting as a new report from Brian Windhorst has revealed some very intriguing details surrounding Bobby Portis's future in Milwaukee, and a trade proposal that has been revealed might surprise you. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. We also have a couple other things to discuss surrounding some of the young stars for the Milwaukee Bucks. So stay tuned for all that. Before we get into it, if you're part of the 80% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Bucks content. And we're on the road to 1,500 subscribers. Subscribing's free, so thank you guys for your continued support. A lot to go over today. Obviously, the Bucks finally got a win in yesterday's game, their third win of the season against the Toronto Raptors, and they hope to continue that tonight. They obviously play the Detroit Pistons, and again, looks like Dame's going to be back, but that's still yet to be confirmed. But today we're going to be focusing on some new reports that have come out from Brian Windhorst surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks and their current trade targets and kind of what their activity level is in the trade market for this team. So let's dive right into it. You can see this here. Bucks reportedly gauging the trade market on former NBA champions. And there's a bunch of different things here that you can kind of dive into. And obviously, Bobby Portis is in a very intriguing spot with this team. And a lot of fans want him gone, and we're going to dive into that as well. But basically, what the report entails is that, of course, Milwaukee stumbled off to a 2-8 start. It is now 3. They obviously now have 3 wins. And they're basically, you can feel free to pause and read the whole article. But it's talking about how most of the Bucks team, aside from Giannis and Dame, are available. Highly touted new head coach Doc Rivers has led the club to a deeply disappointing overall record. We know all of that, but here is what Evan Siddery said of the Forbes, and there's also a quote from Brian Windhorst. So it said, the Bucks have recently gauged the trade market on Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, and Marjon Beauchamp. With Milwaukee's lack of assets plus being penalized over the second apron, they will have to get creative to pull off a successful deal before February's deadline. And of course, on ESPN, Brian Windhorst also came out alongside, kind of coincided with what Evan Siddery said here, and basically said the Bucks everybody is kind of available besides Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they're looking to get a role player to help them on the trade market, and that their primary goal is to move off of, in all likelihood, Bobby Portis to upgrade their team. And that's what Brian Windhorst said. So among this, you can see here, Bobby Portis is 29. We all know how interesting his season's been. He's averaging 12.5 points. And again, on the surface, his season has been fine. It hasn't been completely terrible. He's been scoring the ball fairly well, rebounding, mediocrely. But his defense has been the biggest problem so far this season. And again, everybody who's watched, all Bucks fans who've watched the Bucks game, I don't think there's many of them who are going to tell you, hey, Bobby Portis has been a positive asset. He's been, prior to a couple games ago, one of the worst offensive and defensive players in basketball, according to advanced analytics. That being said, he still offers some offensive upside and some rebounding upside that some teams could want in a potential trade package, and that's why he probably has the most value out of Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, and Marjon Beauchamp. When you're including these 3 guys, they're guys that really the Bucks are looking to move off of. They're not going to move off of Gary Trent Jr. at this point. They're not going to move off of Taurean Prince, and they're not going to move off of any of their young guys in all likelihood. And Ajax, Ryan Rollins, AJ Green, they're all playing pivotal roles, which we'll dive into later in the video. But when looking at some potential trades here, a new proposal has dropped, and it was from a writer on Bleacher Report, and it says Milwaukee Bucks receive Marcus Smart, and the Grizzlies receive Brook Lopez, Marjon Beauchamp, and a 2031 second-round pick. So this is interesting. Again, Windhorst said, Brook Lopez is available. A lot of these players are available, and this one would be very intriguing. So there's a few things to kind of go over here. One, getting Marcus Smart. We'll dive into that in a minute. But you're trading Brook Lopez a second and Marjon Beauchamp. So it's really not that big of a deal surrounding the pick. Like, the second-round pick's not a huge asset. Marjon Beauchamp is not factoring in. Former first-round pick for the Bucks. He's not factoring into the lineup at all. So it'd really be swapping Brook Lopez and a second, really, for Marcus Smart. And as you look at the team, I wonder, and I start to think about how this could actually work for their team. Because obviously, look at the starting roster. You have Damian Lillard. You have one healthy, depending how you want to go about it, probably AJ Green, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez. So if you remove Brook Lopez from that equation, your backup center now, or maybe you play small ball, you're not getting a center back in this. You're getting a point guard in Marcus Smart, point guard / shooting guard. So it's like, even though Marcus Smart's a very good player, looking at his stats this season, he's averaging 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. He is having a really rough start to his year. And again, that's why you'd be technically buying low. We know that Memphis gave up first-round picks in order to grab Marcus Smart in the offseason. When they got Marcus Smart from the Celtics, they gave up multiple picks. So it's at the point now where it's like, would they even want to consider a deal like this? Because again, you're buying low on Marcus Smart. He's having one of the worst starts to his career we've seen ever. And I wonder now if that's something you want to do. And again, they would be, I guess you'd factor Marcus Smart into the starting lineup. And the thing is, the reason you do this deal is because, yes, you're not getting the offensive Marcus Smart that you've never really seen, but he usually averages between 10 and 12 points. But his defense is some of the best. His on-ball defense is some of the best in basketball. So you'd really be adding and bolstering. He'd probably play alongside Damian Lillard as the shooting guard spot, in the starting lineup. So you'd be adding a lot of defense into this, but you're also giving up your only center, really, your only pure center. I mean, you have Bobby Portis, you have guys like, Liam Robbins and players like that who aren't going to factor in big time. So in this proposed deal, you're keeping Bobby Portis around, and I assume he'd either slide into the backup. I mean, he still is the backup center, but maybe the starting center spot. But then you're playing super small with Giannis at the 4, Bobby at the 5, and then you'd, of course, have Chris Middleton at the 3, and then I guess Smart at the 2, and Dame at the 1. And I don't hate the idea of getting a defender in Marcus Smart, especially if it's something like this, but I'd almost rather replace Brook Lopez. You'd, of course, have to make the salaries work, but replace Brook Lopez with Bobby Portis. So then it's Bobby Portis, Marjon Beauchamp, and a second for Marcus Smart, because then the team is looking a bit more filled out now. You still have your center in Brook Lopez. You still now have a great defender in Marcus Smart, and it's just very interesting. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. And again, they're exploring the Pat Connaughton, the Bobby Portis, the Marjon Beauchamp trade market. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. And let me know down below if you made it this far. Comment, would you do this trade, or would you rather kind of have a way and a framework for Bobby Portis? Would you rather a framework of Bobby Portis rather than Brook Lopez, or would you be fine with Brook Lopez in the deal? Let me know down below. But something else to touch on now is Doc Rivers spoke out after the win against the Raptors, and he said, one of the things we've been harping on, getting to the paint and creating more threes. Well, we shot 56 of them tonight, and 50 of them were great shots. We just didn't shoot them well, but man, if we play like that every night and get those shots, we're going to be fine. That's a good point. If you look at the game yesterday against the Toronto Raptors, albeit a very bad team, it's interesting because they got so many open looks from 3, and he claims that 50 of the 56 were open looks. I'd say a lot of them. He's pretty close with that number. I'd say 45 of them, maybe even 50. If you go and actually count each one, like a lot of them are phenomenal looks. So if they're able to get a bunch of open threes, then, and they have a lot of shooters now at this point, they're going to start to hit them. Now, whether Gary Trent Jr. factors back in, he starts to get hot. Chris Middleton, they have a lot of other, moving objects as well. It's interesting because I like the way they played, and if they play that way against other teams, I think they are going to be in a much better spot than they were prior, especially when you think about all the young guys that are kind of starting to factor in now. You see Justin Wills, I feel weirdly optimistic about the Bucks at 3-8 than I did in the preseason. The Bucks have 3 young players that can legitimately play. Coming into the season, there was real feel that the number was 0. And again, we were talking a little bit about AJ Green. Ryan Rollins is someone who kind of came out of nowhere, and like Frank Madden said, the Bucks really need at least one of their young guys to hit as an early rotation piece and as a real rotation piece. Encouraging stuff from Green, Rollins, and AJ early, but now they have to sustain it. Marjon and Jordan Nwora had their moments of prior years too. Green feels like the best bet, but the more the better. And yeah, I think AJ Green has the most upside in actually being and the highest potential to be an everyday starter or bench piece. He's such a good shooter. He shoots it with confidence. But Ryan Rollins, if he continues this upward trajectory, especially now that he got factored into the starting lineup, he could be a real asset for this team going forward, especially at a time now where they need more scoring. That's what AJ Green is giving them. And Andre Jackson Jr., you can factor him in as well. I don't think he's been as good. And of course, they also have their first-round pick in A.J. Johnson, who's going to continue to develop and could probably play a factor into next season's lineup. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. A lot of stuff to go over. They do play the Detroit Pistons tonight. We'll have a post-game video for you all, so make sure you stay tuned to that. See you later.